Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
Five, four, three, two, one, go.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the E-Tims podcast. My name is Desi and tonight I am joined by a reduced cast. Hector Bandido, our resident tactician, has basically said, fuck the board and fuck the podcast. He's that angry tonight. So he won't be joining us. He's just too annoyed. He had to suffer that in person overnight, so he won't be along. So apologies on his behalf. But we are joined by Ralph Mouth. Good evening, Ralph.
Hello, how you doing? Hello, good evening and welcome.
Yes, thank you. And I'm glad to see we're also joined by our man across the water, Monty C. Burns. Good evening, Monty.
Evening, Desi. Evening, Ralph.
What would the C stand for tonight? A cascade of booing, would it be, Monty, do you think?
Concerned, Desi. Monty, concerned Burns.
I could think of a certain word. I think all of the audience know what word we're thinking about here. But we'll leave that for everyone else. Before I do forget, before we get to the agenda, I'd just like to say thanks to everyone listening who has, especially the recent subscribers, obviously the long-term listeners. Thank you for suffering for so long. Thank you for your comments, your likes, your subscribes. Please tell your friends. Please let us know what you think. But it's really been nice to see the amount of people who have been subscribing to the YouTube in various places. So thank you very much, folks. Right, so we're going to get into it. We're gathered here tonight. We did not really expect to have this podcast. We were really planning towards the end of the transfer window. But if your transfer window never starts, Monty, how do you schedule a podcast for the end of the transfer window?
I think Frankie Boyle, or at least it was attributed to him when it was doing the rounds, that there should be a setting on Championship Manager called the Peter Lawwell setting, where you have to generate 20 million in sales before you're allowed to get a loan player in. I think it is own.
It would be the ultimate big boss level, wouldn't it? It would be the ultimate big
boss.
Man. Even Lemmy in his streaming couldn't have beat it. But
absolutely unreal.
So folks, we're coming to you a couple of days after the nightmare that was the Almaty. I'm just calling him Almaty. The Kazakhstan team ranked over 300 places behind us, I think, in the European rankings. But before that, we normally like to look back, and especially with Hector, but he's not here. So Ralph, I'll just come to you first. I did have so far so good. We usually just build the agenda up as we go. So I did have so far so good up until Tuesday evening, Ralph, right? So the league so far, we had the 1-0 win against St Mirren. Luke McCowan managed to save us there. Aberdeen was a lot more professional, clinical. Nygren got his first goal. Had to get that world-class goal, which Chris Boyd, of course, attributed to Aberdeen's poor defending. And then we beat Falkirk 4-1 in the Cup. Maeda, AJ, who is now injured, of course. Dane Murray, nice to see him scoring. And then another ex-Celt, Liam Henderson scoring an OG. And then we also, Ralph, had the joy of everyone laughing at the Huns getting beat with a very professional European team. Have you any idea what a very professional European team looks like, Ralph?
Well, I didn't see one on Tuesday, that's for sure. Do you know, looking back at the first games, I thought we were going somewhere. I thought we were settling. I thought we were getting a wee bit quicker, which has always been my strength. And then on Tuesday, it was just turgid. To sum up, we were talking on the group chat about it, and Monty said something similar. At half-time, I went outside for a cigarette, and then I thought, I suppose I better go and watch the second half. And I've not felt like that for a long, long time about a Celtic game.
Yeah.
We're too predictable, we're too slow, people know how to play against us, and we're not changing, we're not doing anything about it. And that's got to be down to the manager.
I think, Ralph, you're spot on. I think I went out to fix a leak in a washing machine. Such was my level of engagement with the match.
And there wasn't one before the game.
Fucking went looking for it, yeah. I think that apathy Apathy can set in. We always talk about us never being very good at being top dogs. We like a fight. We're the rebels. We're the underdog, and it brings out the best in us. And then when it comes to getting to that top sort of pinnacle, I just don't think we're wired to be arrogant that way as a football club. But there's a difference between expectation and just being completely flat. And McGregor talked about it. I know we'll talk about the game, but McGregor talked about how someone called it the horseshoe of death. We got too wide and we got pinned too wide, which meant that every time we went out, all we could do was scuttle all the way back. He says, and that was the players' fault. They weren't making angles. They weren't sharpening. So they weren't set up to do that. It's what transpired. But fuck when it transpired. You talk about turgid. And that, for me, we have it every 3 years. And Brendan Rodgers talked about it when he came back. The natural cycle of Celtic is 2 years. At the end of 2 years, you got to refresh the whole thing. Otherwise, you go stale. And jeez, that was bad. But all those other variables we're going to come on to in the podcast wasn't just the football. You can have a bad night. We still didn't get beat. We're still in the tie. That team is 20 matches ahead of us. I nearly said 20 years. 20 matches ahead of us with regards to their fitness. So we're going to have another week and another game under our belt before we go out there next week. So we're far from out of it, but fuck, that was hard.
Yeah,
Really
yeah,
hard.
right. We'll just concentrate on Wednesday night's game because again, we hoped Hector was going to be. He was there. I was not there. He was there, and the fact that Hector was really up for the game, and he was even happier when a new Celtic DJ. Remember the old Tiger Tin days? Let's have a minute silence for Rangers being put out of Europe. We've got a new Celtic DJ who was playing faithless and getting the crowd excited. And there was 56,000 people at that game the other night. It wasn't as if it was just no one was interested. The crowd were looking to be up for it, looking for lots of goals, looking for lots of excitement. Let's get the job done. Because let's not forget, we've got to go to Ibrox after travelling away to Kazakhstan and coming back again. 11,000 mile, whatever it is, round trip. So everybody was up for it. But Ralph, the players did not seem up to it. Brendan Rodgers' quote is, all I can do is prepare the players I have. Those players to me, feel free to disagree with me, those players to me did not look prepared for that game whatsoever.
There was a couple of them. First of all, Carmack got booked kind of early on. And after that, he wasn't even involved, really. Hatate looked up for it. But I think it's a season too far for Carmack, maybe a season too far for James Forrest. The only time we showed any kind of urgency was when Yang came on and Maeda moved into the centre. And we looked like we might get something for the game for about 10, 15 minutes. But after that, there was nothing. Adam Ida, I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know if he's carrying an injury. But he's not the man.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you had Cameron Carter-Vickers with absolute concentration, which, to add to his goal last year, could have been an assist for him. The whole lot of them didn't take it seriously. Now, that's partly on the players, but it's also on the manager.
Yeah.
I think that I would disagree with you both in terms of how they were set up. I had this discussion with Big Snaffle Taffle during the week as well about you had to remember Brendan Rodgers is an elite football manager, right? And then that's it. Brendan Rodgers is used to coaching players of a higher technical ability than what he has at Celtic. That's just a fact. That's his career. You also have to look at Rodgers' ability to put a system together, which was so effective last year, and then tweak that and move it forward into this year. You then look at the bigger picture of the quality that is missing from that team, an entire front line in Kyogo, Jota, and Kuhn, all gone. You can question his decisions around starting Engels, but he already gave the logic for that. He said when teams come and sit in, that's not Engels' game. Engels is far better suited when there's space and he's going to play loads of games. Rodgers has said all this in public. The issue for me is one of fundamental quality of player that he has at his disposal. And if you think about how those elite, let's just, I hate using the English Premier League, but it is a league where most top players go. Spain's probably better from a technical point of view, but just bear with me. Those boys aren't just physically better and physically stronger, because you look at the physical profile of most of those top players. They're not also additionally just technically superior. They're also tactically superior. That's why Rogers loves McGregor, because McGregor's got all three. He's not the biggest, but Jesus, he's brilliant tactically, and he's a brilliant technician. All of our project players, all of the square pegs that ended up in round holes, are neither elite level physical, elite level technical, nor are they anywhere near elite level tactical. And that's a fucking disaster waiting to happen if you don't invest in the right level of player, lads. So I don't think you can pin it all on Rodgers. They played their system. They knew their own flaws. They worked it out in the second half. And yeah, we could have got something, but you cling on to the positive and you move on. We didn't get beat. We've got a one-off game now to qualify for the Champions League. Shouldn't have been that way, but that's what it is.
The argument or the counter argument is that if we've got anybody that's an elite player, it would be Daz Maeda and possibly Kieran Tierney. And yet we had them both in the same area of the park. Every time we went forward, there was...
Yeah.
I kind of missed Greg Taylor, because at least he would move out of Maeda's way. And we had the two of them, possibly the two attacking threats on the left-hand side, in the same place, just getting in each other's way.
At one point,
So that had to be down to coaching.
Ralph, that's a great point, because I was discussing this in the work the other day. At one point in the midfield, Callum McGregor, Nygren, and Hatate were all within 5 yards of each other, and the Almaty guy still get the ball. I mean, they were all done. So this is why this is what I'm saying about preparing the team, Monty. I did not see a team who knew exactly as Ralph says. Obviously, Maeda and Tierney have to work out when you overlap, when you go in. But at this point in time, there doesn't seem to be a clear, Kieran, you will overlap, and Maeda, you will cut inside and provide the space.
Yeah.
You can't see it, because the two of them are just done and going, were you meant to overlap? Was I meant to go inside? No, that might...
And you're right, Desi, because that fluidity on both wings that was there all the last year is broken on both wings. You have a different fullback with Maeda in front of him, and you have a different winger with Johnson behind him, and now Johnson's out as well. So effectively you've lost the potency of an attacking threat on both wings until you've either got settled personnel or better quality personnel. And the issue now is, Ida is an easy one to point a finger at because he's sent forward. Ida scored 20 goals last season in a system that wasn't suited to him when he wasn't the main starter. We're still not playing a system suited to a big centre forward like that. He spent most of his time having to come out of the box because there was nothing coming into the box, or what did come into the box was fucking abysmal. And again, that's back to, system malfunction. If I can bring it back to GAA, Armagh were brilliant all year up until 15 minutes of the quarterfinal. We had a complete system collapse for 15 minutes. And 15 minutes destroyed our championship. 15 minutes, Kerry scored 14 unanswered points. Our midfield disappeared. Our fullback line forgot how to defend. We couldn't get the ball out of our own half. And that happened in 15 minutes, and that was our season gone. We're seeing system failure, guys, but you have to put good players and better players pick up things easier than James Forrest is 34 now. It's arguably our best player on the pitch. That's fucking scary.
Yeah.
For what we are and where we are, that's scary.
Yeah, I was going to say a big Twitter argument, but let's be honest, people will no arguing on Twitter at your age. A discussion on Twitter about James Forrest, and somebody went, James Forrest has more than earned his jersey over the years. And I went, I am not having a go at James Forrest, the most decorated Celtic. I'm having a go at the fact that we should not be relying. This is before the Almaty game, we should not be relying on a guy who's 34. He should be coming on with 20 minutes to go because he's really good at closing a game out. We should not be relying on him to win a game. I mean, his role of winning a game has gone. His game now is to secure the win and just see the game out while bringing on the new blood, teaching him what he's learned, experience, etc., etc. But you watched that game the other night, and similar to the Tierney and Maeda, even then, you've got Johnson rampaging wing back, but then every time the ball goes to Forrest, he just done that cut-in thing. He does that. He can't take it the byline anymore repeatedly. Maybe once at every 10 touches, but other than that, he does that cut-in thing. And then if you've got 6 defenders, there's nowhere to go for your Hattie's or anybody else to go, and it's just a waste of time.
Yeah. And you have a 6'2" centre forward who's waiting on crosses into the box because he's actually very good in the air, or he's waiting for someone to hit him a ball to hold it up and bring runners into midfield who are all within 5 yards of each other and not running past them. So system failure. Now systems, yes, you can pin some of that on the manager.
So again, well, we'll come to you for this to start with this. So he does a great perspective point. Right? Somebody put up a really good tweet there today, maybe I think it was, about is this the first time we have never had a good striker and a big list of strikers away back to your Gary Hoopers and beyond your lap. Right? We always seem to have a recognised decent striker. And then so either like everybody, I don't think anybody's looking to pick on either or say it's either's fault for wanting a better word, Ralph. But what was interesting our night was apparently when somebody got injured, Brendan Rodgers spent his time berating either. He didn't spend his time talking to anybody. It was this apparently either was not doing what he was expected to on the pitch. He was meant to be coming back and playing the ball into the channel, and he was trying to play like a 90 centre forward by holding the ball up and trying to draw people in. So is he listening to the instructions? Does he fit into a Rodgers team, which we thought he would have, but is it working, Ralph? How long do you persist before you say this isn't going to work?
I read somewhere that the last goal he scored was back in May.
Yeah.
And he's had plenty of opportunities as a starting striker, and he's just not done it. But bringing him on with 20, 25 minutes to go, it works. He scored 20 goals. To say we've not got a recognised striker, Maeda scored 33 times last season, and yet we punted him out onto the wing again. Yeah. I think it was against Falkirk when the way they were playing. You could tell that we would get away with moving Maeda inside because Tierney was doing all the work in the left wing. And Maeda scored fairly early in the game. I'm not sure if Rodgers is capable of or wants to change the system during the game. The other thing against Ida, we had quite a lot of corners. And he didn't do anything from them.
But there's two parts to that, Ralph. There's the ball in, and then there's your ability to dominate a man in the box. And they were probably a better physical team than us. They just had more physicality. But for 15 or 16 corners with zero, I think Scales maybe scraped one off the top of his head. Like, we're terrible at set pieces. Like, I was laughing about Arsenal and Arsenal stealing a march on Spurs and signing that guy Easy or Ezzy or whatever you call him. And walking through the logic and why it was making me laugh. They got a serious injury to one of their key wingers and went straight to the market and paid over the odds to get another one in. We lost Jota at Canada's in April, May last year. Yeah. And we've made an absolute fucking bunch of fools out of ourselves, haggling with a Dutch club, refusing to meet their asking price, who then went on to someone else. And we're doing the same thing again. And that's the difference. That's the difference in a club that wants to back their manager to get success and a club that, I want to bore the shit out of you and talk about RPI and CPI and inflation.
We'll come in the board.
We'll come to that.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, I am still waiting. I'm still waiting for the Martin Boyle heading west story to come. I can honestly see it getting that desperate, right? Who can we get to Parkhead within the next 4 hours? I mean, and then just phone Dundee or phone somebody or phone Aberdeen. I mean, I'm still wondering if Miovski's sitting by his phone. But Ralph, I think I thought the whole game was summed up. And Monty mentioned Scales there. Scales was probably the best. I made a joke that Yang had been on the pitch for 8 minutes the other night and he was one man in the match. And the first 8 minutes he appeared. But realistically, Scales was probably our man in the match. He put the most effort in, I would say, and actually applied himself to the game. But Ralph, I said the whole Celtic situation was summed up with the words, and Liam Scales goes to left back. You know what I mean? And you're kind of going, really? That's where we are. Ralph's at right back, Scales at left back. And we're beyond clutching at straws. We're literally in the sorry heat asking them to give us the slops out the treats. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's almost as though the manager's trying to make a point about it to force the board to do something. But we'll come back to that later on. The whole thing just seemed like a lack of planning. If you look at, say, Almaty, they would have looked at us, seen the way we played, and played to counter it to get a result. We didn't. We just kind of, again, it was a reactive instead of proactive stuff. And it is like a cycle. Every 2 or 3 years, we end up back in the same situation, and we're not moving forward.
Yep.
It's frightening, to be fair.
And I think when we do get on to talking about it, it's not that you can making excuses is the wrong phrase. There's an assumption you can make around how the PLC behaves that actually, if you look at it in the main, they're doing the right thing. And I think the big unknown variable that none of us has any insights into is whether Brendan Rodgers is going to stay after this season or not. And if I was a betting man, I think everything at the minute points to the fact that he's not. He's going to do his 3 years and leave. If you're the custodian of that, then why do you give him 20 million when he won't give you a longer term commit? Why do you not then keep it and say, well, do your job with everything else that you have here, because by and large you should be all right. But then the counter to that counter is you have a £40 million gamble now, which should never have been a gamble. You could have given him 10, 15 million, got him the 2 players in that he wanted, that you had identified, that he had identified. Lennon Miller was never properly courted by Celtic, depending on who you read. Rodgers really liked him, thought he could come in, thought he could put him in, seen him as a kind of natural successor, and a bit like Brown, a natural successor to McGregor. And we never went for him because it was Rodgers and Tidsdale's recommendation that this guy would be a great long-term thing, but board wouldn't spend 4.5, 5 million. You know, you're back to this parsimony. Give him Miller, give him that first winger, or give him like Fistgarden, that guy, who ended up going for 8.5.
Yep.
There's 2 players immediately that would have started that game with a manager a hell of a lot fucking happier. And 40 million gamble is less of a gamble. It feels self-defeating, but in the context of if your manager's leaving, why would you give him all the money to spend? It's almost justified, but it's so fucking it's so loose. It's just lack of planning.
Two things on that, right? I'm going to come to you in a second, Ralph. 2 things on that. One, but I was discussing the other day also. You're not spending 15 million on 2 players this summer. You're going to pay it in 3 instalments. So you're maybe spending 5 million. You just took 5 million in for Frimpong and don't. So
for nothing.
Actually, you're net, like Ralph, we had this conversation yesterday. Net spend. I mean, like I know it's a wanky football term, but if you're looking at the accountancy side, well, Rodgers must be going, well, wait a minute, we've not actually spent any money. I have no impacted your bottom line whatsoever here. It's still growing up the way, and the quality is going down. But Ralph, the other side of that, we touched on this before we come on air. When we came on air, a professional European outfit. Bruges sold 4 of their players who excelled last year in the Champions League.
Yeah.
We remember in the Champions League. They sold their players, immediately bought 4 players for 30 million, Ralph. And you watched them at Ibrox. I know Rangers had a decent second half, if you want to clutch at straws. But that first half was sheer professional European, a top 24 club in Europe. And that's Bruges. You can't tell me that they are a Real Madrid and the equivalent against us. I mean, we should be on par with Bruges, surely, Ralph. As he reaches for a drink. I think that right.
No, it's the dog.
You, Monty. So no, I mean, it's like why not us?
I think I put that into my WhatsApp. That was a team brilliantly coached, technically capable, physically dominant, who knew exactly what it was they were doing the whole way through that game. And I was looking at that going, but every fucking time we find another reference point like that of a club of much smaller stature with similar budgets that we should be aspiring to. Remember Alkmaar for a couple of seasons
Yep.
were like just fucking amazing. You had the Rosenborg years of why can't we be that
We'll get a
too?
new, we'll
You
get
know,
a
we
new
ended
one.
up playing them.
We'll get a new one in Bodo Glimt now. They won 5-0
But again,
last night. Smoking
and
cigars.
again, so there's two clubs with extremely solid management, coaching, tactical nous, developed a European way of playing, both of whose managers would probably be on multiples of what they're currently earning should they come to Celtic. It's a culture, and by the way, I was thinking about this earlier. We're probably at the end now. If Brendan Rodgers goes at the end of the season, there's not another, Celtic minded, the phrase, but another elite manager that would want to come to Celtic in the way that Rodgers had a draw to bring him back. So I think we're going to be rolling the dice again with another overseas manager, much like Postecoglou. And I was thinking, you'd fucking take the arm off either one of those two clubs, Bodo Glimt or Bruges, if you thought that they could implement that style of football at Celtic. But again, you make the point, they sold 4 players, 80 million. They bought 4 players immediately for 30. We've sold 20 something million of players this summer. We've spent 3
Yeah.
and haven't given the manager 1 player that he wanted. Liverpool, you want comparisons, 300 million they spent, but sold 200 million. So their net spend is 100 million. Like, we are so far off the top table, Desi and Ralph. It's fucking, again, but we're sitting burning 70 million plus in the bank in cash. What the fuck are we at?
Yep.
Last summer, Rodgers got 26, 30 million, something like that. And he didn't start Engels, a club record signing against Almaty. He didn't start Thirsty. And Ida got hooked at half time. So
Yeah,
you
but
need to think that I'm not a board fan, but they'll be sitting there, he'll be asking for money, and they'll be saying, hold on, you don't even trust the guys that you spent this
but
money on
that's
last year.
well, if they're doing that,
That,
then they're into the fucking Bob Kelly world again, which they shouldn't be, and that's the point I was kind of alluding to earlier. Rogers made publicly stated why Engels wouldn't start games like that because he's not suited to games like that. But the other side of it, Ralph, there has to be an asset turnover strategy at board level.
mm,
And I think this is the contradiction, and this is why Rodgers and elite managers like that are not a good fit for Celtic. The strategy has to be, if you read it and you look at it, it's a cycle, as you say, 30 odd million. You'll spend 30 odd million every 2 to 3 years in the expectation that you will get a return on that asset purchase of at least 100% of that. So you'll turn 30 into 60. It's easier to turn 30 into 60 if you take a punt on 5 Matt O'Reillys and 1 happens, because you still only spend 7.5. And that's our thinking. I think that's our reason why we struggle so much in the transfer market, because we're not prepared to make that gamble of 30, 5 players at 6 million or 3 players at 10 million, because it's a lot harder. Ida won't go for 20 to 25 million. Engels won't go for 20 to 25 million. He might if he develops in the next 2 years, but Ida definitely won't. Trusty won't go for 12 to 15 million. Carter Vickers, you might get 10 from because he's proven in Champions League level. That's the challenge that the board has, but that should be none of their fucking business. If Rodgers decided to spaf 30 million on 1 player from the Irish League, that's on him. The problem is that the strategy that the board laid out prevents the club from trumping the PLC guidelines on assets. It has to be, otherwise they're incompetent. Otherwise they are literally incompetent and they're in the way of our football operation.
Right, but again, so who's like I've heard a lot of this. They gave Rodgers a lot of money and these signings didn't appear. And my question is always, is it Rodgers really? And I know Hector's known and he's explained it before, but your Paul Tisdale's, Ralph, he's meant to be the head of recruitment. He's meant to have a good working relationship with Rodgers. So is he bringing the players to Rodgers and Rodgers is signing them off and ultimately Rodgers is then dropping the players? And or is the board telling Tisdale, go and get us 5 prospects, i.e. were Japanese left back who Rodgers has already said can't defend, and you think they're never going to get a game. And then, so this guy Tisdale's trying to please 2 masters and no able to please any of them, rather than having a clear, direct, singular approach. Because I think it kind of sums the whole thing up that no one knows how it works.
Well, the question is, who is Tisdale accountable to? If Rodgers says to him, go out and get me 3 or 4 players for certain positions and they're not up to scratch, whose fault is that? Is that because Tisdale's got the power to sign players ahead of the manager, whereas ultimately the manager should decide? If, for example, Tisdale finds a player that we need to pay 30, 40 grand a week, does that mean he has to play because we're paying him so much? Whereas ultimately, I'm old-fashioned. I think the manager should go out and watch these players before anybody gets signed. But that doesn't seem to be the way that we do things in the modern day. So ultimately, who is accountable for the signings? And we've no idea.
Right, so Tisdale doesn't work for Rodgers. Tisdale works for McKay. Tisdale works on the operations side of the organisation. And I put this up actually in a reply to someone who was having a pub at him. Tisdale's job, and I think there's always a subtlety in the statements that get made publicly. Tisdale's job is to find and develop players in line with Celtic's stated strategic objective. I can dig up the exact quote, but their stated strategic objective of finding young talent and nurturing them up to the level of Champions League capable, something along those lines. So when Rodgers talks about it's another good club signing, Shin Yamada, 100 games, 25 years of age, is a club signing. Someone has looked at his stats, Tisdale, has looked at the price and went, that's worth a punt because this boy seems to be as fast as Kyogo, as mobile as Kyogo, as hard working as Kyogo. We could mould that. The young fella, the left back that we signed for 200 or 300 grand, that's a cheap punt. You know, that's if he works, he's got all the physical attributes. Seemed to be decent in the couple of games he played, but as Roger said, he's not tactically aware enough. He doesn't know how to defend yet. And at Celtic, yes, you're going to have the ball loads, but he also needs to be able to defend. That's Roger's job and the coach's job to teach him how to defend. Now you're developing. I don't think Tisdale's job is to go out and say, this guy here, here's Lennon Miller, for example. I don't think that's Tisdale's job. I think that's Roger saying, I really like this guy. What do you think? Could we do a deal?
Let me tell you, this is a direct quote from Brendan Rodgers. Paul's side of it is purely more on the actual performance of a player that will fit into our model and whether that player fits closely and he can bring the football analytical stuff to that as well as overseeing that recruitment process.
Yep.
So there
Development. Yeah, he's not the chief scout in the old school way, Ralph. Rodgers, I think, still would have the eyeball test on, that's the guy that I want. Then he said himself, he's maybe not doing a good enough job of selling what he needs to the board. So he's getting knocked down every time he goes with, I want Fitzgarden, I want Lennon Miller, I want Balikwisha. And then the lawyer in Nicholson goes and sees if there's problems in the clauses in the contract. And I actually don't know why McKay, by the way, looking at the remuneration table, McKay and Nicholson have played a blinder in 3 years. They've both more than doubled their salaries. They've both more than doubled their package in 3 years. I know nobody who's doubled their package in the last 3 years. Nobody. So somewhere within the jigs and the reeds, these two boys are passing to the deal.
Are they acting in their own interests? Because there's maybe a pay scale or a pay deal.
Their bonus.
If they make money for the board, the bonuses.
Their bonuses.
That makes them better off. So you cannot be altruistic. Human nature.
Yeah. And we've seen it before. We've seen it before with the previous CEO. We see him now in his board role, where he went from 40 grand a year in a nominal, which is a decent fucking salary for essentially 12 meetings a year. He's now getting 10 grand a meeting. He's getting 120 grand. And the board that he serves as chair signed that off. For what reason? He's not doing 3 times the meetings. He's not doing any additional duties. They just literally signed off a 200% uplift for Peter this year. So you look at all this, and Nicholson got a 17% pay raise. 17 fucking percent. I mean, you look at it all, and in the performance of a PLC, if these were people making biscuits, are fucking
Well, the
beer.
scary thing is that whatever's made them that money, whatever's given them that uplift, they're going to do the same thing for the next 12 months to get a similar
Exactly.
uplift. And the 12
Exactly.
months
And
after that.
but this is the key. It comes from the performance of we've had this. This is what I said in the WhatsApp. It's Groundhog Day. The only way they can do that is in the successful operation of a PLC, which is completely dependent on the successful, and by successful, I mean winning things, being attractive to a paying public football operation. And what they're doing is they're fucking doing the Harry Carey, Russian roulette, call it what you will. They're fucking with the football operation again. But they've lined their pockets that much. Like, neither of their wages will go down. I noticed also McKay made less in a bonus this year than he did the year before, if I read the numbers right. So McKay obviously missed out on one of his KPIs for his bonus calculation, but Nicholson didn't. So you have lots of nuances around how these fuckers are taking you. Well, it's not my money. As you know, I opted out during the week. I started the rebellion, Ralph. I unsubscribed from all things Celtic. No fucking self. But yeah, this is, I mentioned that Animal Farm, George Orwell, everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others. These guys are no different. No different than the Kellys and Whites. They're
Yeah,
just doing it in nicer suits.
Exactly. But again, I think the main point is right. These guys are doing their job very well.
Brilliantly, by the way. Brilliantly, yes. Brilliantly.
The Celtic share prices were up 56% in the last 5 years. It's only took a dip in the last year. So that's what they're getting judged on that. And they're still turning and going, there's a couple of trophies in that boardroom. How good are we? Let's go and get a photo taken.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it's the fact that it's so disparate between the football club and the PLC now that it's no longer running. One is no longer running to help the other. One is running to help the board. That is and again, anyone listening, feel free to disagree, but I think that's what most of the fans are seeing. There's no clear connection between the fans pumping all the money in, the board taking that money, hoarding that money, and then forcing us to see what we see on the pitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And that Desi, just to round out that last point, that disjoint, we all got drunk. Like they fucking won a watch when they took the gamble with Postecoglou. Because we literally, you look at what that man delivered for Celtic in monetary terms, not just trophies, but also entertainment. He ticked all three boxes. Right now, Brendan, for the last 2 years, has absolutely ticked the monetary box. They've given money to spend. He's ticked the trophy box. But he's not really ticking the entertainment box anymore because they're not giving him the tools for his entertainment value and his system to be the right thing. And I think that's where the disjoint starts, Desi. The product isn't good enough on the pitch to blind us to the fact that they're not really spending a lot of money. But the bigger one that everyone knows about, what the fuck are you doing with 70 million cash in the bank? And they're going to end up spending millions this year on tax that they could have avoided legally by buying assets and backing the manager. You get into this fucked up cycle of it's almost like self-immolation, Desi. So, sorry, I'm on one.
You're right. And again, hopefully, happy Celtic last, happy Celtic last. Hopefully, we'll have her on very soon. She's also highlighted repeatedly the whole why are we paying more in tax on profit than we are for players, which is exactly the argument. I mean, you stand in front of the board, but let's come back to Wednesday night, Ralph. Did anyone have, I think, what was it, the 20th of August? Did anyone have the 20th of August for the first sack the board chance? You know what I mean?
No, I thought we'd leave that for a while yet. Maybe after the end of the transfer window, but again, it's just looking back at that game. It was like nobody was bothered. Nobody seemed to care that this is probably the most season-defining game of the season.
Yeah.
Everything else doesn't matter. But I did think about it afterwards. When was the last time we actually won a game that mattered? If you think about it, we kind of stumbled to the league last year. We lost it against the Rangers in the last game. We lost the cup final. When was the last time we actually were up for a game that mattered and won it?
This group of players peaked in Munich. The Brendan Rodgers 2-year cycle absolutely hit the fucking ceiling in Munich. And at the end of Munich, that was the end of this group, which is why Kuhn, Kyogo, Kyogo's already gone. Was he? By Munich he was. Or no, had he gone? I can't remember.
He went before the Aston Villa game, didn't he?
Yeah, Kyogo had gone. It was the end of the group, and that group needed to be refreshed. Essentially, immediately after Munich, we should have been, and I think we were, Garden, Lennon Miller, Balikwisha, those other players who we were so heavily linked with, it was clear we were in discussions with, but then we didn't follow through. We didn't execute on any one of those deals. And that's the criminal piece. That's a year and a half, not even 2 full seasons in the Rodgers tenure, which for me suggests, are you going to stay for another couple of years? I'm not quite sure. But we can't really give you the money you're after here. If you don't, we can't give you that because we need it for the next guy if you're not going to stay. And maybe that's what's going on. It just feels so self-defeating.
We've discussed this before, the paradox, the Paradise Paradox, I think I called it last time. The Celtic board are protected by the fact that they can say Brendan Rodgers won't commit to a new contract, so we won't give him money. Brendan Rodgers is then protected by saying, I won't sign a new contract because they won't
until you give me money.
The fans are left in the middle going, like, we're literally in the middle of the divorced parents shouting at each other going, Mommy, Daddy, please stop fighting. You know what I mean? When you think that's exactly what and we don't know why they're fighting. They don't tell us. They just tell us to go to our room and hand over our pocket money. You know what I mean?
But the other piece, Desi, that is for me an absolute feeling and a pointer towards the amateurishness of people who, like Michael Nicholson's earning the guts of $1 million a year now, 837 grand this year. Chris McKay's earning 570, I think, if I looked at the numbers. They haven't said a fucking word. Not one minuscule statement, not one, we're looking forward to sharing with you our plans for growth, the stadium, the hotel, all the things that we just hear in the ether. These fuckers are sitting quiet. And you're in that scenario, the dark art of politics. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. And you know that there's tension there between Rodgers and them. They're both making a lot of mistakes right now. And it's like brinkmanship where it shouldn't be. It feels to me almost as toxic as the relationship that disintegrated between Peter Lawwell and Brendan again. It feels like they're just leaving him out there. Fuck you, you're the manager, you're the profile guy. We're doing our jobs, why aren't you doing yours? And it's disjoint, as you said, Desi. But if they just say something, just fucking say it, then maybe we'd be less angsty.
Yeah, and again, that's a very good point, Monty, because Ralph, exactly, I was just going to say to you, Ralph, again, you have noticed on social media, and again, we have different opinions within our wee group, let alone within the wider Celtic fan community, Ralph. But you can see all of the alternative arguments from all sides and various different variances of those arguments online from people saying, well, as you mentioned earlier, well, Rodgers spent 30 million, or people blaming the board. And it's a classic, get them all fighting with each other and they'll forget all about the fight with us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. The other thing is, if you look back to the last time we had what you would call an elite manager and we were doing well, was just after Seville. We kind of peaked then, but it took us 20 years to even get close to that level again. Yeah. And then before that, there was the kind of post-Feyenoord thing, where we had a talented squad, but we refused to pay the wages that would even match or even go halfway to the money available in England. And there were Scottish players at the time that were playing in England that could easily have been tempted to come to Celtic, and that would have driven us on from 74 onwards, maybe, to being the successful side that Liverpool ended up being, because they bought Dalglish, they ended up with Hansen, that would easily have come to Celtic at that point if we had the same ambition as these other teams had. And if you look at the wider picture, I know it's a 50-year thing, but the ambition doesn't seem to be there.
Ralph, do me a favour. Can you, off the top of your head, remember how much and when we sold Dalglish for? And how much?
440,000, August 1977.
1977. So 440,000.
77. Yeah, just before school
Right.
started back.
Okay. This one clearly stuck.
They call it
447 in
Boston now, Ralph.
what year? What year, Ralph? Sorry again. Sorry, what year?
77.
So
77.
440 grand in 1977. Do you know how much in today's terms we sold Kenny Dalglish for?
8
In
million.
today's terms,
No,
2.6 in 2.6 million. That's how much we let Kenny Dalglish go for if you take into account inflation. And I've been fucking about with this because I wanted to see just how far we had progressed. Sorry, humor me for literally a couple of minutes. I wanted to see how far we had come in terms of just basic fucking cost of living, cost of life. Chris Sutton, £6 million in 2000. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
11.4 million in today's money.
The
Right.
equivalent of a Tory Andre Flo, you mean?
Or the equivalent, actually, more expensive than Arnie Engels, because Arnie Engels was 11 million, I think, euro. If we reverse engineer it, this is where I was having a bit of really nerdy shit crack with myself. 1.5. Right now, show the amount. How much did we pay for David Fernandez from Livy in 2002? I know, actually, because I looked at this. 1.5 million. 1.5, well, actually, 1.5 million euro it was reported at you, right, Ralph? 1.2 million, which is the equivalent of 2.2 million in today's money.
To be fair,
My
he
point-
did drink that every night. But remember that story? He was sitting in the pub, sitting with a pint, and someone had to remind him he was playing the next day. Remember that story?
So my point in this, right, because this like you start to see. Hold on a fucking minute here, because I'm gonna need a new car soon because my own lease car's fucked. And I went looking on forecourts and I nearly dropped because obviously I've got disjointed from the cost of things. Right now, so far this season, bearing in mind this is the close season. Or sorry, not the close season, we're in the transfer window time. We have spent in year 2000 terms, we have spent 1.6 million. We've spent 3.2 million right now in transfers which in the year 2000 was the equivalent of 1.6 million, or an Ulrich Larsson. We're going to the market right now and asking, we're trying to replace £25 million sales in Matt O'Reilly with players who are costing, in year 2000 terms, 2 million. And I know it's not a really good comparison, but my point is we haven't even moved with inflation. A Chris Sutton today, just with inflation, costs you £11.5 million. And we are aspiring to be that again, yet we're spending money on Mo Silla type caliber players in the hope that they turn into Chris Sutton. Like that's a fucking damning indictment of growth. A damning indictment of growth.
Exactly, Monty. That brings on. This is another question I had, right? So we mentioned earlier on one of the scorers this season has been Dane Murray, right? And Sean Maloney, our next Celtic manager, is currently the new pathway manager meant to be. He's replaced Darren O'Day, who never seemed to promote anybody into the first team. So, I don't understand. It's that whole smoke and mirrors. I've no idea how Celtic's recruitment stroke planning works. Why are we going out? Because we don't seem to be buying elite prospects, if you know what I mean. We're not exactly buying people who you can immediately see, wow, give that boy a loan to Kilmarnock for a year and he'll be ready. And I'm not saying Christopher Ayer was the greatest thing ever, but you could see that guy was going to be good enough to step into a Celtic jersey after a year getting bloodied. Even Scales has managed to do it, but the recent influx don't seem. And I wonder, well, why are we wasting all this money either on academy or wasting it on prospects from abroad, when either A, you could just concentrate on the academy and make sure you're actually playing, you're giving the kids enough time to actually give them a real chance of making it. I mean, rather than this, anybody who's an elite guy, 16, or you don't bother bringing the people in and just say, as you just mentioned there, rather than haggling that for a £2 million player, Just put all the money together and buy one £6 million player. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
which is what Bruges do, which is
Yeah.
what Alkmaar do, which is what clubs of much lesser stature but similar financial banding than us do. And our asset strategy has to override that logic, Desi. Otherwise, they're incompetent, or otherwise, as someone said, like you hear this bollocks, darn it, Desmond signs off on everything. No, he doesn't. No, he
But,
fucking doesn't.
have,
Let's
you,
just be honest.
have you seen the news this week of who is the 27th highest spending club in the world this week?
No, who?
And
Wrexham?
Wrexham is the highest. I think they're just behind
Yeah.
Milan, and that is my current prediction for Brendan Rodgers' next team, because I don't think they'll be promoted. And then
Well, Swansea going to Wrexham, that's fucking
Hollywood Monty.
No, it's not
I
the
said it to
Forest.
my daughter, and she immediately
He's
I can see
Brendan's next job is in Spain. I will guarantee you his next job is in Spain. He's not going back to England. He doesn't
I'm thinking it's either West Ham or Wrexham. That's where I'm putting my money on. West
But
Ham.
Not the Forest.
But if you circle it back, Desi, to that point you made, Hudson Edward was the last time we spent big money on an elite
An
prospect.
investment.
€9.5 million, sold him for 20, and he'd only 1 year left on his contract. So
That
for every Hudson Edward, there's a Raphael Scheidt, you know?
Yeah.
And for that Hudson Edward, if you'd have got it right, you had 4 Matt O'Reillys, you know, or fucking 3 Kyogos and a Matt O'Reilly thrown in for good measure. That's the game. But that should be none of the board's, sorry, none of the operating part of the PLC's business. Brendan Rodgers should be handed 20 million at the start of the season going, get whatever the fuck you want. You know what your wage parameters are. If you want to pay him 40 grand a week, come to the board for approval. Otherwise, spend your 20 million wisely, but you can't spend any more than 50 grand a week in wages. That should be it. End of.
Ralph, I'm just thinking here. Would I be right in saying at one point then we had Edouard as the development striker, the investment striker? He'll be good in 12 to 18 months. But challenging for the front line was Dembele and Lee Griffiths. So you'd three high quality strikers, regardless of where Lee Griffiths end up now. He was a 40 goal a season striker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you think back, quality across
there's an interesting point there, because Griffiths was far and away better than the two of them put together. And all of a sudden, Dembele had a good game at Ibrox, and Griffiths, whose attitude was, well, let's just say it could have been better, you know, towards training, towards being even a teammate from some of the stories we heard. So he kind of get pushed out. Dembele became number one, then Edouard came in, and we made a lot of money on both of them. So I'm just wondering, it's just occurred to me, the PLC doesn't know a great deal about football. It's concerned with business. It understands business. Yeah. And we've been very lucky in some of the players that we brought in for low money and sold quite high, such as O'Reilly, Dembele, players like that. So they maybe think, because we've all worked with balloons like that ahead, you know, above us in the work environment, they maybe think that's kind of the norm because they're that used to it. So they think that whatever we did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's just going to be as easy to do it again. They probably don't understand that we got lucky rather than that's the norm. Because I can't think of anybody else that's made that kind of money on players that they brought in that were not established players. And whatever it is that did it, there can't be anything consistent because we've done it under different managers and different coaching teams. We just got lucky, and the board seemed to accept or seem to think that that's the way football runs. And that is a major problem.
Yep. Okay, right. So I've got two points while we're on this. First one to you, Monty. Right, you are our finance, business acumen expert. How do you solve a problem like Maria, Monty? What would you do? He's right. Oh, he's off. He's off. Right. So I'll come to you, Ralph. While we're waiting on Monty coming back, he's shown as muted at the moment. Ralph, the question I had for you was, I've entitled this wee section the blame game, right? So Monty can answer for the board and where that could be fixed. We've discussed Tisdale and recruitment. We've looked at Brendan's tactics, which are questionable in all of our eyes. But the fans, Ralph, is there anything the fans could do, should do? Are we stuck between a rock and a hard place, as we mentioned before, the divorced parents? There's nothing we can do. The numbers game suggests there's nothing you can do to move the board, regardless. Do we just have to suck it up?
I think, first of all, we need to lose this sense of entitlement. Yeah, we've had a good 20 years or so, domestically certainly. We need to lose this idea that just because there's money in the bank, we need to spend it. We have to stop criticising players on social media, on the radio shows, the phone-ins, that kind of thing, because they read it, they hear it, and footballers need confidence. And Greg Taylor was a prime example, and yet more than anybody else, I felt we missed him on Wednesday. So we kind of pick players, and it's always their fault. They can't do anything right. And if you're going to your work and you're getting picked on all the time for not doing what you're supposed to, then it'll backfire.
Can I give you the perfect example of that the other night? I know the other night, the other week, the Aberdeen game, someone posted, and I can't remember who it was, or I've got a good idea, but I'm not going to mention names. Someone posted on Twitter, apart from that wonder goal, what has Hatate contributed today? You know what I mean? And I just thought that kind of summed up the current Celtic. And again, I think it's a general malaise about and it all comes, shit rolls downhill. It all comes to the fact that no one knows what's happening at the board level and at the management level, which, as you say, even so, feedback feeds up the way from us to the players, sure, but the confusion also feeds down. So even though Rodgers might think he has explained to the team the other night what he's expecting and how he was expecting passion from the start, etc., if the players still have a wee seed of what the fuck's going on at this club, you know what I mean? That it's still really hard to suddenly motivate yourself to be that. Here we go. And we just naturally assume somebody like Maeda is always going to be on it. And even for the start of this season, he's looked as though he's caught in a bit of a fog. You know what I mean? That kind of. And so it's just there's no longer a buzz. There's a fug about the place rather than a buzz.
Even if you think about it, he prefers to play central. He plays central for the national team. He got the job after Kyogo went, and he did very, very well. But all of a sudden, he's shunted back out to the wing. And now he's even got Tierney in the same place as him. It doesn't make sense what's going on. None of it. And when you watched him play against Almaty, but it's just that whole too predictable thing. And we've been back to 2, 3, 4 touches now before we do something. And at that level, you have to be as attuned mentally as you are physically to what's going on. You need to make decisions in a fraction of a second. And we're not. We're holding on to the ball, we're looking around, and the other team can see what we're doing. And they adapt accordingly. We don't.
That was exactly what you could see with Bruges the other night. And I don't mean to go in, but I think they are a yardstick where we should be. We drew with them. So again, they're on par. We should be on par each year as we progress, at least. And the league's the same, etc. So there's no any big, they got 100 million for TV or whatever. You watch them against Rangers, every player was getting the ball, passing the ball, and moving to receive the ball. No, that idea. There was a clear plan. There was a clear. Every player knew his job, and it's the kind of. You've seen that a few times with European teams who are on the same level. They have a lot more. They seem to have a lot more football intelligence than us, and you wonder. You go, but how can we have really good players, but when you put them together, it doesn't seem to click? When you assume the more they play with each other, the more it's going to click. You know what I mean? Like you just assume these things will come natural, but we just seem to have these off days where it just doesn't work. It never starts. We never get into first gear. We're stuck in neutral, and we never go anywhere. And you just wonder, how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
It's because we're missing somebody that'll, in the old cliche, that'll grab the game by the scruff of the neck and make it happen. Scott Brown used to do it to an extent. Roy Aitken was probably the last one I can remember of that would literally lift everybody around him just by what he'd done. And we don't have it. Cal Mack is a good player technically, etc., but he's not a leader in the sense that he can make other people do stuff. He might lead by example. He might sometimes curl one in for the edge of the box, but he's not somebody, to my mind anyway, that motivates other players in the way that a Roy Aitken would. We miss that.
Yeah, it's like again, you can see like Cal Mack, it's increasingly he's collecting the ball at the centre point and passing it 6 yards. He's no longer getting it and running 30 yards with it. No, that way we're no causing any pressure. Now we've got 5 guys behind the ball, and it's similar to the current Rangers complaints. I can't remember the guy, Joe, the guy with the beard. I can't remember the guy that came for Leeds. I've seen complaints about he's sitting far too close to the centre halves collecting the ball, so you'll get 6 defenders against 3 attackers, and it's sawdust joy. And we're a wee bit like that, I think. Monty, you back?
Yeah, sorry lads, the battery just shut itself on the phone. So
That's
hopefully
fine, that's fine, right. So we were just discussing, is there anything the fans can do? Ralph saying we just need to back the team. But I had a question for you, Monty, as our businessman.
We don't like I do.
How do you solve a problem like the Celtic board? What do you do, either as a fan or as a businessman, or as you are the new non-executive director? You replace Brian, 40 grand a year for fuck all Wilson. You walk in with a list of questions. What are those questions and what are those suggestions, Monty?
You see, the thing is, well, firstly, you're never getting an invite like that because that's going to be a job for one of the boys. You know what I mean? They're never going to bring in dissenting voices, even though they should. They will bring in complementing voices. If I was to come into that thing, the first question I would ask would be, when we touched upon it, what is the asset turnover? What's the asset strategy for the organization? Like in our book, Celtic Park is valued at 56 million. 56 fucking million. You think what does Spurs spend over $1 billion on their stadium? Less capacity, but a modern stadium. So we have an asset, property, plant, and equipment at 56. By the way, that's probably Lennoxtown as well. What is our actual strategy with regards to our assets? Because that opens up all sorts of things. What are you really doing to try and grow the value of the organization? Lennoxtown was a good investment, and the club has done well to do that, develop that. I think they've done really much for Barrowfield, although they did write off a few million for things there. But ultimately, where football is a completely unique thing, Desi, the asset strategy relates to your players. What is your business model? And everyone talks about Celtic's business model being sound. But the challenge in changing the direction of that PLC, there's a great website called Simply Wall Street for anyone who is fucking really bored and wants to read it. And Simply Wall Street give a really good independent analysis of the performance of any PLC. And while we talk about Celtic in glowing terms and football talks about this amazing model and the best run club in world football, all that shit, Simply Wall Street would say that Celtic's success has been moderate. And it's moderate on the basis of what I've just touched upon. It's also moderate on the basis of the overpayment of its executives. And it's also moderate in regards to its market capitalization set against the potential for what it could be. So in short, Desi, I'd ask them, what's your asset strategy in relation to tangible assets? What is your asset strategy in relation to the football operation? And ultimately, why is all a bunch of cunts? That would be the third question.
I can see you're channeling your inner Hector there. Someone did ask on Twitter when I announced we were doing the Good God Almaty podcast. Looking forward to Hector calling out that shower.
Yeah, channeling my inner Hector. But
Yeah,
Desi, they're doing a good job if it was a non-emotive business. They are actually, you can't say they're not, but this is an emotive business. Like I was on a rant, I know on the WhatsApp earlier this week. They can go and fuck themselves. As I said, they clearly don't need my emotional involvement in my fucking 50 plus years on the planet. They've had enough of it now. They can give me something fucking back. They clearly don't need my cash because there's 70 million in the bank that they're refusing to spend on things that I would look at and go, thank you for that return on my investment. And they know they've got a captive audience. And they are Tory cunts too. And the thing that really rankles me, and now I'm on one, they don't align to my personal values. None of them fucking do. Maybe they do in private. And I mentioned this. What is Celtic PLC's position right now on a fucking genocide that's being live streamed? What's our PLC's position on Palestine? That's a non-political fucking statement. That's just a human statement.
I
And they
don't
fucking
think
hide.
I don't think we have a Celtic shop in Gaza at the moment. I think there's plans in the future.
If they thought they could make fucking money, and do you know what? There's a great guy, Omar Al-Baghdad, has wrote a book.
Beaton and Ayo Berkovic are doing the grand opening in 2028.
Fucking, I think we seem to fucking desire doing the worst thing possible at all times. There's a guy wrote a book. I'd recommend it on audiobook or book for anybody, and its summary is: one day everyone will have been against this. And it's the ultimate summary in fucking cowardice, and that's where our board sits. It's not where our support sits. And I know that there are many people in our support who will be deeply uncomfortable with the position that the Green Brigade take on this. But how can you be fucking uncomfortable against the massacre of fucking children? And why don't we be a leading light? And that comes from the board. And the thing that they don't get, if they were brave enough to fucking take the lead, they'd be genuinely, they would grow exponentially, Desi. But UEFA's that fucked and compromised, and FIFA's that fucked and compromised, that you still have a bunch of boys representing a bunch of genocidal cunts playing football. And I'm delighted, by the way, that there's none of them in our shirt. And that's a terrible indictment of my own state of mind. But Celtic do not represent my values right now. Not in any shape or form in the field.
You now have me wondering if Peter is still on one of those. Remember there was the elite club. They had a wee foundation of their own. Your Bayern Munich's that member. And he made a vice chairman or something back in the day. I wonder if we still have any affiliations. I can't remember what it was. But
his last gig, sorry, Desi, his last gig was in fucking Saudi Arabia. He got that jolly before he packed it in as a chairman. You'd wonder what went on behind those closed doors.
Yeah. Ralph, you're
sorry for the rant.
No, that's why we're here. Ralph, you're a marketing guru. What would your suggestions be to Celtic now? Should they adopt a PR? Should the board adopt a PR exercise? Should they come out and communicate with the fans? Or should they just double down and say, go fuck yourselves?
Well, first of all, we've done a kind of an arc where we started on about the board and getting their remuneration and how they seem to be in some kind of comfort zone. So because it suits them, they'll not come out and say or do anything that is controversial.
Yeah,
it would affect their own lifestyles. If you look at I think it was either last week or the week before, when UEFA actually made a stop killing children thing at one of the games.
Fucking.
Why do you think yourself?
Own the narrative. Own the narrative.
Goodbye. So we bid farewell to the Palestinian Pele. We bid farewell as if he just got on a fucking boat and left for a holiday. That's the fucking this is what I'm saying. This is the bit that if we had a board that was in tune with our support, but actually was in tune with just decent fucking human values, they would take the lead in the way that some other football clubs are.
Somewhere Hector's trying to doze on a couch somewhere and keeps waking up with a clenched fist and he's no idea why.
he's sensing a disturbance in the force.
Someone just
remember. Right.
Yeah, I'm channeling my inner Hector.
Yeah.
On the
Right,
last
so Ralph,
podcast,
Ralph,
I said
Ralph.
if we end up playing Maccabi Tel Aviv, do we do the honourable thing and withdraw? Right? And obviously that never happened. They get put out. If we drop to the Europa, there's a chance we'll play them again because I think they're already in there. Now,
Yeah.
back in the 50s, when when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary, we were drawn against Ferencváros and we refused to play them.
Yeah.
This board doesn't have the balls to do that. This
No.
board doesn't represent anymore what I think is the perfect club for my own beliefs. This is kind of the reason I've stayed with it for near 60 years.
And that was the scary thing, Ralph. You and I sensed that fucking apathy in that game for the first. I've never felt like that watching a Celtic football club match in my life. And I don't think it was just a product of what I was watching on the pitch. I think it was a product of all of these other variables. Sorry, Desi. I'm
Right, so that's a good question, right? This made me wonder, when was the last PLC club that took a stand that you can remember?
What? Yeah. No. Liverpool.
No.
On what?
Liverpool on the Sun. That was one, but that was you could argue that was populist. Liverpool PLC, when Klopp came out and said, you can go and fuck yourselves for your breakaway league, we're not going anywhere near it. It's not about money, it's about the fans. And they did.
Yeah.
But Klopp, I think, called their bluff. Klopp got there before the PLC got there. And Klopp was so powerful, they had to fall in behind him. Like, we have an affinity to Barcelona. And I see now that cunt, and the other cunt, Joan Laporta, fucking actively promoting those fucking psychopathic, genocidal Zionist bastards.
Yeah.
Actively promoting them as if it's some part of Barcelona FC. You know, all of these things that you feel as someone emotionally invested in football, you want something to reflect your identity. You want something to at least be close to. Loads of things that Celtic do that I don't agree with, but I can live with. But just the basic fucking tenets of being a good human being.
Do you know?
Of being on the right side of history.
Remember Lord Livingston of Parkhead? Do you remember him?
Was that? Oh yes, the telecoms guy. Yep.
Do you remember he called us all anti-Semitic way back?
It
was a German, wasn't it?
No,
he said we were anti-Semitic because we criticised him.
Yes. Because we criticised him.
I remember doing the diary afterwards, so we're all racist now, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing. They live in their own little world, which isn't affected by things that affect us and people.
Their little world is, if anyone goes to a modern, their little world is Dermot Desmond's little black book of contacts. John Reid was only appointed Celtic chairman because he had the Home Office's number for Dermot Desmond's company to get the airport security.
London City Airport. That's exactly how it works.
But then he get the contract for all the new scanners in the airports in the UK.
Yes.
So it's again, Lord Livingston had a cabinet member. Never forget, he was made a lord to become a cabinet member because of his telecoms expertise. So you're not telling me Dermot Desmond was not touching into that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And we put, not we, our majority shareholding block put people like that onto a board of a club that was founded to feed the poor in the East End of Glasgow and maintains that ethos. It's no different than what's happening in British politics, that the leader of the left working man's fucking party is a fucking knight of the realm, an absolute plant, whose only job is to make sure that the poor man stays fucking poor. And that's that. Don't get me started about Starmer. I'll go fucking off on one again. Sorry.
I have only one. And apologies, folks. I know I think I have mentioned this many times. But if you want to get a quick example, a very good, entertaining example of what a cunt Keir Starmer is, look up Word in Your Ear podcast with Mark Allen and Dave. What was his name? David used to present music show on TV. But a word in your ear, look up the Paul Gambaccini interview. And Paul Gambaccini tells you exactly how Keir Starmer went after various celebrities purely to increase his own profile, and how the Labour Party turned against everybody. And it's unbelievable when you hear him talking about it. But that's like, but just before I forget, Ralph, I didn't put it on the agenda, but we just remembered, Ralph, I just remembered they're talking about the disjoint between the board and the fans. Ralph, what about these big barriers that have suddenly appeared to keep people away from the Green Brigade and various other parts of the ground? All of a sudden, security.
I saw something about that. I remember a couple of years back, you used to get it as you come out of the North Stand, where you could only go such and such away for about 15 minutes. But to do it inside the ground, all right, they don't want you wandering about and going to sit in a seat that's not yours or whatever. But what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if there's a fire or a medical emergency and you've these big barriers that stop people getting to where they need to be?
Yeah,
that has to be a safety issue. And don't forget, we had the inquiry about the police at Janefield Street. And we never heard anything about that.
I remember that big report at the club. Remember the big press conference they did to tell you exactly what had went on there, how it had affected, how they were sorry, how the police had said they were sorry, and how it wouldn't happen. Yeah. I mean, we're one step away from fucking Elbit drones, making sure that you haven't brought your own bottle of water into the stadium. It's fucked up.
So this is also another factor. Apparently, people are getting through the turnstiles. Like where I sit in a nice prawn sandwich main stand, we go in and we only have to go up 2 flights of stairs. We wouldn't go up any more than that. But apparently now they now have stewards on the stairs asking to check people's tickets going up the stairs when you enter, and also if you want to just jump into the toilet mid-game, in case you're planning on going to another part of the ground. They're trying to make it as if it's to keep too many people trying to get into the real seating. But it's just being cunts for the sake of being cunts, right?
There's no logic to it. There's no logic to it.
Yeah.
And touching on that Janefield inquiry, this is also where I think all of this is going to go, right? Regardless of what happens, we're coming on to the away leg in a minute, but regardless of what happens next Tuesday, if we go to Europa or we go into Champions League, regardless of what happens, we'll get to the AGM in November. It'll be the usual stage-managed AGM. Everyone will be talking on social media and whatever about how people are going to be able to express their views. It'll be a stage-managed AGM. There won't be any questions. There'll be usual directors will be re-voted in. And then the Celtic directors will answer one person's query and say, we hear you, we see you, we will organise a liaison committee and let's have a chat in the near future. And that long grass will be pitched into the long grass and never be heard from again.
You asked a question earlier, Desi. Sorry, Ralph, if I can just jump in on that. You asked a question earlier about how do you affect change with this PLC? And I know Hector had alluded to it. I'm not stealing his thunder, but I wanted to take it kind of a stage further and just explore it a wee bit. Now, that said, if they got sniff of it, they would change the AGM to 2 o'clock in the morning on a fucking Sunday, somewhere in the Bahamas, probably.
Sandy Lane, Barbados.
Sandy Lane, yeah. We'll do it remotely.
I have been. I have been to Sandy Lane, Barbados. In case Dermot's listening, I would go back.
Would you rate it 1 to 10?
Oh, a fucking shit. Wayne Rooney was on the beach just down below me, but I wasn't allowed on the beach. I have been for afternoon tea.
If you wish to affect change with a PLC in an industry like football, it has to be extremely visible and it has to be full of energy. In order to, then what I mean by that is, as Hector said, you're not talking about physical fucking violence. No, never. That never really works. But if we go down the fucking dark path here and things go tits up in the way that it's a 50-50 chance now they could. And when we say tits up, like really what are we talking about? We're not talking about, it's a first world problem. We didn't qualify for Champions League over in Europa. It's hardly fucking life or death. But if you want to affect change for people who are oblivious to the sentiment underneath them, you need to make them really aware of the sentiment that's underneath them. So the AGM will have a published date well in advance. You hope for good weather and you mobilise. People tend to forget. I think in general in society, people have forgotten. The fuckers in power work for us. We don't work for them. We are actually the customers of that business that these guys have themselves in their business-minded PLC operations as. And we, as the customer, are fucking king. Because if the customer's not king, you don't have a business for too long. So you could affect change, Desi. if it does become the same procession, the problem is what I touched upon in the WhatsApp. Adam Curtis talks about hypernormalization. Chomsky talked about narrowing the spectrum of debate. Modern society is built to stop you from mobilizing. It's built to stop you from going up the parkhead in your thousands and fucking outside. It is deliberately structured in such a way that even to congregate in groups of more than 20 now, I believe, is a fucking offence in Britain. I don't know if it's made its way to Scotland yet. So if we're really that pissed off, if sentiment really gets that, then yes, you can you can affect change by making them very fucking aware without crossing the line. But the issue is, Desi, what's Michael Nicholson at whatever he is, 40 years of age, earning nearly $1 million a year? Is he going to resign and get another $1 million a year job somewhere else? Is he fuck? He's there for life. The same way McKay's there for life, and all of the other people until they're ousted. That's just our reality. I'd love to think cells for change is a thing, but is it really needed right now? No. I'd love to think cells for ambition is something that could come alive. Like fucking join with us and build a movement. But is it going to happen, Desi? I highly doubt it.
As I
Well, the
say,
question is there already a movement there? Is the Celtic Trust, which is trying to get all the small shareholders together into one block, is that something that you would think is worth getting involved with?
yeah, but the limit, it's just, I keep saying on your chat, it's a numbers game. So even if the Celtic Trust got their 5%, where they could start asking for EGMs and start trying to be, you're trying to get the pest factor in. You're trying to just keep niggling them until they get so pissed off that they actually concede something. But the numbers are so big in the favour of your Dermot and a few friends. You're never going to get anywhere near them. People keep saying, "Oh, Dermot's only the minority shareholder," but there's a pack there. There's a pack there with all block shares, and it's never going to make a difference. We are where we are. We're this fucked.
I know I went on a rant about the Celtic Trust, and I didn't mean to personalise it, though it is a very well-intentioned thing, but it does serve a useful purpose, and I mean that cynically, because you might have guessed I'm in a cynical frame of mind at the minute. They serve a useful purpose. They are the vehicle. They are the People's Liberations Front of fucking Judea, or the Judean People's Liberation Front. You can call them whatever the fuck you want. They can't do anything. But what could happen, Desi, and I wouldn't discount it, Celtic's market capitalization isn't that big. Celtic's ability to grow is probably what's prevented anyone coming to Desmond saying, "I'll take that off you." Because the people who would come and spend 200 million on buying Celtic, because market caps are around 180, I think.
Yeah, 168.
168. So for someone to put 200 on the table to get Desmond to walk away, you want a return on that unless you're in it as a genuine custodian. And I do believe that Desmond, in his own mind, behaves like a custodian, because he could have done what the Glazers done to Man United and could have rid that club fucking solid. And the Glazers have ultimately destroyed, along with that prick Radcliffe, who's another cunt, by the way. They've destroyed the soul of Man United Football Club. They've literally torn up in front of their fans, yet there'll still be fucking 80,000 people at Old Trafford. So if you get a bunch of, it could happen. David Lowe, people like that are connected enough to money to know this. You could put a consortium together. You could buy them out. You could make Celtic the vehicle that we all desire it to be as a fan base. The problem for things like the Celtic Trust is you can never make a statement that's actually a real statement based on action, because you're going to piss off some of your members. And that's ultimately why it's doomed to fail, Desi. What is your position on matters of human fucking integrity? What's your position on Palestine? That should be the starting position for any conversation with any entity that you wish to engage in. Like I'm on one. Canceling subscriptions, don't use Spotify anymore. Those fuckers fund drones and Palestine. I've started deliberately and actively choosing as much as I can in my life. And it's fucking liberating, Desi. It's the smallest piece that I can do as a human to at least get some of my values back. But how does a PLC do that? How does a PLC project onto hundreds of thousands of people globally? You do it by being different. And I think it's going to happen. In European football context, someone will take the lead on this. And then as Omar Al said, then it'll be the cool thing and everyone will have done it. So sorry, lads, I'm on a full rant tonight. I can't help
No,
it.
I just think
It's good to have
to be honest, it does it.
Ty Hickey back on the. Good to have Ty Hickey back on the.
He should. He should.
No,
And he's been out there, Desi. He worked a good job.
You're doing a good impersonation of him there. So,
I'm channeling Hector and channeling Tiger at the minute. Yeah.
no, right.
Those two
So,
folks.
so we are where we are. We'll see again. This is week 1 of this game. We'll see how that plays out. Right. I'm just wary of time. Let's just bring it back for the last 5 minutes to the football. Right. So we'll get Livingston tomorrow, Ralph. Right. And the most interesting thing about this game for me is what happens if Tony Ralston gets injured?
Who plays right back?
Well, to be
Skills.
honest, that shouldn't be. If we're going to try and get through this game in Kazakhstan next week, we need to do something different. Maybe 3-5-2. Just something that will throw them and make them think that they need to adapt to us. 3-5-2, which would be Scales, Carl Vickers, and Trusty's injured, so he is. And Dane Murray, right? Dane Murray in the middle, Carl Vickers come up to the right-hand side where he can't do that much damage. Scales on the left.
Right. So here's a quick interruption. Do you think they're injured?
Well, if not, maybe we could sort that out over the weekend. And then 5 in the middle, which would be
September the 1st. We'll see in September the 1st if they were injured. Right? Sorry, Ralph.
Right. So it's Tierney on the left, Maeda on the right as a wing back, and then you've got Engels, Negron, and McGregor in the middle. No, sorry, Negron can wait. Jesus, he's not as good as we thought he was. So that would be Engels, Hitati, and McGregor in the middle, and then 2 up front if we've got to. Hold on, that's
but we don't have to.
You've not got one.
Are you going with Johnny Kenny and Shinya Mata?
Osmond.
Hold on.
We Osmond.
Yeah. We Donny and Shinya Mata.
James Forrest
So
scored
that
a hat-trick for Scotland once.
It's just anything that surprises them. Or surprises me. That would be nice.
I think we will go with the same, Ralph. But I do think we will start very differently. I think we will come through on Tuesday. I do. I have a sense we will because we were so bad on Tuesday night. I do think we'll come through Tuesday night.
Bad doesn't mean we're going to get any better.
No, I just don't think we can be as bad again.
Prediction wise, then Monty. Prediction for Livingston tomorrow and Almaty Tuesday. What do you think?
Livy tomorrow is going to be turgid, but we'll come through it. I'd say we'll probably come through it 2-0. I don't think they'll score against us. They'll throw a bit of physicality at us, but we'll be all right. Almaty, I think it's going to go one of two ways. I'm going to let the head rule the heart. I think we're going to squeak it, either 2-1 or 1-0. My heart. Yeah, my heart tells me we're going to come out of the fucking gates and have it done by half time, but my head's telling me nah. It's going to be a squeaky one, but I think we'll just have enough. I could even go to extra time, Desi, but I think we'll do it by goal.
No, I will echo a little bit what you said there. See if we do come out the gates flying, say we score 2, you can guarantee it'll be one of those games where we really could have done without half time. No, that way when we start the second half, suddenly we go back 10 yards and we start. Everyone starts looking behind the covers.
Yeah.
What about you?
Hey, Livingston, I think Maeda will play central, which means we'll score goals. So, yeah, we might well win that comfortably. But as for next Tuesday, we're going to get beaten penalties. We're just not. I really don't, unless he changes the way we play, because I reckon their manager will say to them, listen, they're going to do exactly the same. You'll get 10 minutes at the beginning, hold out for that. And they'll probably either beat us comfortably, 2 or 3-0, or we'll lose on penalties, and we'll all be dead unlucky. And Rodgers will probably start Maeda in goals or something. So no, not in the least bit, not in
You
the
see,
least bit confident.
you see what's getting missed in all of our fucking doom and gloom about Tuesday? They didn't really trouble us. They didn't. Carter Vickers gave them an opportunity to load the keeper.
We troubled us more than they troubled us.
Well, he
We
got
troubled
that in Europe.
ourselves, but we
He
troubled
cost us
ourselves
he cost
more
us
than they
against
troubled us.
Bruges. No, just
No.
I only need to see him line up, and I know something's going to go wrong.
We troubled, as you said, Desi, as you said, we troubled ourselves more than they troubled us, and I don't think we make that same mistake. But you never fucking know with Celtic. It's the joy of it. Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
Look,
I think we'll.
there is that too. If Tony Ralston starts at right back or his wing back or whatever way he decides to play it, you know that guy at least will give us 100%.
Aye, but 100% of a 6 out of 10 player is all right.
Do you remember me saying about the players listening to this and reading it?
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But he'll give it a shot, and he'll give it a shot all through the game. Most of them give up halfway through if it's not going their way. They'll touch it 3 or 4 times and chuck it to somebody else.
Sorry, we actually don't have any cover for us. Sure, we don't. We don't have any.
No,
cover.
we're talking again. This goes back to today. I might take the names. Stephen Welsh was meant to go to, I think it was Plymouth. And
Plymouth fell through.
We fucked about so long before saying, okay, you can go. That Plymouth went, no, it's all right. We've went and got a guy.
So went and got somebody. Yeah.
So he's left in limbo. And then we're talking about some young boy we were going to send out, and now we're saying, no, son, you can maybe be the backup for right back in the Champions League stroke Europa. It's just like we keep talking about every year. This 6 month to 18-month plan is going to come into fruition, and it never does. But that's by the by. That's Ralph, is from Wednesday's game for next Tuesday's game, is their 17-year-old superstar standing in front of the ball and getting booked.
Oh, he's in. He's out. They've 3 or 4 players out too.
Yeah, the keeper's out, and 2 I think their defenders are out. So we should have a chance. I actually think this could be the game for Yang to start and actually make a couple of goals.
He's brilliant in Europe. He's a different player in Europe.
He's actually attacks people. When you actually think about our wingers, they don't attack people. Like Forrest cuts in, and Maeda and Tierney are getting confused at the moment, so that doesn't really work. So at least Yang gets the ball and says, drive. I know it doesn't work 6 times out of 10, but 4 times it does, and we'll get a chance for A4. So fingers crossed he can make it.
Angles will start. Angles will start on Tuesday. Your midfield will be Angles, Hatati, and McGregor.
And then
your back 4.
I hope
so. So this is back. This is back to the. But Engels will start, and so Engels will be perfectly placed to send those lovely deliveries in to the non-existent Ida, because Ida's not actually playing because he's injured. It's square pegs, round holes, and we just don't fit correctly. Right, but then last point before we finish, and we have a word from our usual sponsors. The last question. We may have a podcast next week, we may not, but in case we don't, last question, Monty. Will Dyson Maeda line up at Ibrox before the transfer window closes?
Yeah.
Yes, he will.
Right. Okay. I'll say no. Right. I'll say no. I think he'll be gone by Thursday. Right. I think he'll be at Brentford by Thursday. That's my prediction. And the car park, Celtic car park will be full of Hector and his family will be in that car park if they dare sell Maeda.
It'll be like a scene in Braveheart. There's the end come running up the fucking Gallagher with the Irish ones. Me and Hector will give each other a big hug, and we'll just turn around and face the building.
It would be the exact opposite of Robbie Keane. Remember Robbie Keane signing and everybody turned up at midnight? It would be the exact opposite. Maeda sneaking out the door at midnight in the last transfer window, and everybody turning around, locking up as he goes and turning around, and the whole of Hector's family is just standing there waiting for him. Oh, right. So yeah, Monty used to say the old phrase, it's good to live in interesting times, something like that.
Aye, may we live in interesting times. We certainly do, Desi.
So this is certainly interesting times for interesting times. So fingers crossed, all works well. At the moment, we have no idea, folks. All we can all do is enjoy the ride as much as possible. Fingers crossed we can get through Livingston without any injuries or suspensions. That's another thing we have to worry about. People actually getting sent off against Livingston and missing the Rangers game. So it'll be interesting. Cal Mack, I can imagine them trying to pick on him tomorrow. So wait and see. And then we'll go to Kazakhstan, the big 11,000-mile round trip. And then we go to Rangers next Sunday. So we'll wait and see what happens. All right, folks, thanks once again for listening. Thanks for bearing with us. Only left for me to say thank you to Monty C. Burns. Thank you, Monty.
And a big thank you from the channel to Hector and Tag Hickey as well.
Yes,
I think all three of us enjoyed that.
It turned out the Monty C. Burns, the C stood for channeling tonight.
Channeling, yes. No, thanks, Desi. Thanks, Ralph. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Right. And also thank you to Ralph. Ralph, thank you, Ralph.
Oh, aye, great. Fair cheered me up.
Oh, I know. That's it. 3 p.m. kick-off tomorrow. It'll be gone by then. All right, folks, my name is Desmond. We'll leave you with a word from our usual sponsors and then an outro song especially suggested by the eTims Net followers on Twitter. Thanks very much for listening. Good night.
Big Tams of the Gallowgate are proud to sponsor the eTims podcast for season 25-26. Do you suddenly hear the fans calling for your head? Do you want to purchase some really cheap pitchforks and sell them to the same fans in the superstore for a generous profit? Just quote the code everyone to the car park now, and you can get a £19 and 16 pence discount on your application to be an absentee landlord in the Parkhead area. Big Tams. We have been hearing Celtic fans cry out "sack the board" since 1888.
Good times for a change. See the luck I've had can make a good man turn bad. So please, 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 let me get what I want this time. Haven't had a dream in a long time. See the life I've had can make a good man bad. So for once in my life, let me get what I want. Lord knows it would be the first time. Haven't had a dream in a long time. See the life I've had can make a good man bad. So please, 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 let me get what I want.